Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge, if necessary, destroy media and narratives. I'm Peter Lavelle. Well, it's election day. The final tally will be in a number of hours, and that's why I wanted to bring a very close friend of the Gaggle and of Crosstalk, of course. He only goes by one name, and that's a name that everybody knows, that I know, and his name is Lionel. And Lionel, I'm calling this video for the Gaggle 2020 election, Lionel gets the last bite. So, my friend, you get the last bite. Well, how do you see the lay of the land?
Trump eventually wins.
Okay.
I didn't think that 5 days ago at all. Let me give you a proviso. And you can use any analogy you want. Imagine I'm a physician and I've got your lab tests back. And however you look, will I survive? Will I die? I can say, well, based upon this, we got to be, you've got to always limit, based upon what I think, what's going on. Something could, of course, intervene. But let me tell you what has happened here as of late. A week ago, I would have said they're going to steal this election outright, irrespective of whatever Trump does. They're just going to steal it. And nothing can be done. And then a couple of things have happened. Number one, in no particular order, but in the best order. Peter, I don't know if you've seen this, but in the past 5 days, listen, Trump has been, in the last couple of days, on a media blitz. We used to have the old whistle stop, when Truman would say, hi, and they'd be going to Roanoke, and hi. I, the other day, watched something. I'm thinking, my God, how long is this rally? It was like the second rally. I'm watching the second. I can't believe what a 74-year-old man is doing.
Yeah.
Not just a rally, but Peter, 30,000, 20,000, 10,000. I mean, it's like the Stones. It's seeing the Pope. It's something I have never seen in my lifetime. And we've had popular. We've had, Reagan was popular, Barack Obama during his first year especially, but nobody, and I mean Bill Clinton, nobody could draw this. That's number one. Now, contrast that with Joe Biden. And let me just say something if I could. I'm not one of these people who thinks it's funny to make fun of his senescence, his dotage. There are people who have parents who were sunsetting, and I think that Trump should back off on that. Let other people do it, but even it's apparent right now. But when you see the contrast, you see Biden dragged out at a Home Depot parking lot. You see Barack Obama, nobody there. You hear in the background some lone horn. Jill Biden, John Bon Jovi, nobody there. Stevie Wonder, nobody there. Lady Gaga, it's almost like it's almost like he repels crowds. What he's saying is, in response, I'm doing it not to be a super spreader. Okay, so you have that contrast, and as you know, people, when they see crowds, they will go to restaurants, they will go to places because of a crowd, because a crowd means something. Unlike Yogi Berra, who said nobody goes to that restaurant anymore because it's too crowded. So that's number one. Number two, the Hunter Biden issue does not in and of itself mean anything really because it's too complicated. But let me explain. It dovetailed with something important. Of all the things in the world for Twitter to do, it banned the New York Post. This is the fourth biggest newspaper in our country, started by Alexander Hamilton. It's not just some trifling tabloid. Twitter banned it. So the American voter public who says, wait a minute, why did they ban it? Because of Hunter Biden. I'm going to now look into the Hunter Biden. So you have this.
Streisand effect.
Plus you have this, right. It's also the Streisand effect, right. And you also have this wonderful conflation into people who are demanding the repeal of Section 230 of this Decency Act. And anyway, you've got that. Next, you've got something called the crypto Trump voter. This is somebody who, for reasons that we can't, the gay community, black community, the people that you would not, people who live in urban areas, people who would not deign to show to show favor. That's coming up. And also, you have a couple of polls, Trafalgar and others, a little bit more, you show him winning all of the states that he won in 2016, plus picking up about 4 more. Now, the key tonight, are we going to have an answer? No. But Pennsylvania is going to be the log jam. It's going to be that Bezor, that intestinal blockage. That is going to be interesting because they're all but saying we're not going to give this up no matter what happens. So, for the foregoing reasons and the vermin cited, I say to you that ultimately he may do very handsomely in terms of electoral votes. Certainly not a landslide in popular vote, but this is what I'm saying now, and not merely because I'm feeling it or I want it. Yes, I want him to win, but I don't work like that. I'm looking at, I believe, substantive data, my good friend.
Yeah, you bring up some very good points, and points I've been thinking about also the last few days, and primarily because of Fox News, because the other networks won't carry the rallies. Okay, and you're absolutely right. It's extraordinary and unprecedented in our lifetime. The crowds that the president is able to attract. But is that enough to get over the finish line? And that's a big question. I mean, it is really seemingly a contradiction when you see this intense enthusiasm. I mean, they adore him. They simply do. But is it enough to get you over the line? And then you look at, and then of course, when you come to a presidential election, there's no end to the numbers that you can crunch. Okay, and it can be quite exhausting, and particularly since I'm not a numbers guy. But my biggest criticism of the president is that he really didn't really expand his base. Now, we can talk a little bit about Hispanic votes and black votes and things like this. Okay, fine. But it's not enough to move the needle, unfortunately, for Trump. And again, I really appreciate what you just said about Joe Biden, because I'm really sick and tired of people. That's elder abuse. It's not funny.
Yeah.
I think it's dangerous because there's a likelihood that he will become president of the United States, and I will bring up Hunter in a second here. But for me, what is really shocking is that essentially this has become a referendum on Donald Trump. Why do I say that? Because I think it makes perfect sense. Because compare him to Joe Biden. I mean, the focus is not on the weaknesses of Joe Biden, which are quite obvious. Okay, but it's because people, in 2016. There was a visceral hatred for Hillary Clinton, and that was to Trump's advantage. Okay, lock her up. I mean, it's memorable. I mean, just like when Ronald Reagan said, "There you go again." I mean, it'll go down in lore, as part of our lexicon. But the fact that Joe Biden is ahead in so many of these polls, and I'm with you, I'm very skeptical of all these polls, but even if it's close, it tells me this is a referendum on Donald Trump. And what I think is really interesting under what got him elected in 2016 and the coalition that he has around him now, it may not be successful, but I think it is something, a beginning of something that could fundamentally transform American politics, and that's a realignment in politics. Because basically, Trump solidified where he has working people, he has working class people, and that's the new Republican base. You and I are old enough to know that the Republicans were the country club party, okay? Well, and the Democrats were of the working class. We have a realignment going on right now, and I'm really excited about it. Okay, and maybe history will say that Donald Trump was a catalyst, because let's go back to 2016 with the primary. Is that 16 of the best and the brightest of the Republicans? No, it was the Republican base that chose Donald Trump. They chose him. Okay, after all the money that was spent, in of course all the campaign against him, and he still won. And then look at Joe Biden; he was anointed. He was anointed. Okay, and Kamala Harris, she was anointed. And so, for me, what's really interesting is that I essentially think that Trump will lose. I think it was a race that he should be winning by 10 points.
One problem.
Okay, jump in.
The polls are
Yeah,
plus 10. The
yeah.
polls, without going into detail, people that I talk to say the polls are plus 10. See, one of the things that people need to do, and I would, and I would never look if I ran your uh, candidacy, I would say we're never going to tell anybody we're ahead. We're going to say we can do this, but we need you. And we need you to get out. Once you tell people you're ahead, you build in complacency. Like, what do we need? I'm not going to get up and all that. This is the worst. Plus, there's talk about violence here in New York and others. I'm not going to risk
Yeah,
it.
but
You know, he
Lionel,
doesn't need it.
if I could interject here,
Sure.
I mean, I think nominally speaking, you're absolutely right, and that hurt Hillary Clinton absolutely. Okay, she's the inevitable president and all that. But what I would say is that again, this is a referendum because there's been no policy in this campaign, which I very much lament. But our voters saying, I usually don't vote, but I want to get this guy out of office. I mean, you can't see how it works that way as well.
Could be, but not if you're told there's no need to. Don't worry, Joe's got it. That's number one. Number two, people are saying, look at where Joe's buying TV. It's very smart people out there who say he bought more TV in Kentucky, I think, than in Texas. Wow. So he's basically Pennsylvania. He came in, and for those, by the way, who are not familiar with this, you have to appreciate, as I do, a great liar. I don't know about you, but I've met some great liars, and you almost say very good.
Yeah.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris said, under no uncertain terms, there will not be fracking. Now, nobody knows what fracking is. Nobody gives a frack, dare I say, about fracking. Nobody knows what this even, they think they do. But in Pennsylvania, they do.
It's true.
And he said, because Joe, again, I don't want to make fun, but he is easily swayed. And Joe said, you don't understand, man. We're going to do it. We're going to energy policy. And they gave him this kind of a leftist, alt-left, nihilistic, new Green Deal, whatever it was. Same thing for Kamala. Then, just at a standstill, they turned around and said, we never said that. It was beautiful. Here's the other thing, too. The internal polls that Trump is doing and paying money for are showing completely different. And the same thing goes for Biden. They're not letting on to this. Look, here's my biggest fear. Let's just cut to the chase. For the first time in American history, you can mail in votes. Just mail them in. So all of a sudden you hear Cuyahoga County, Calhoun County in Ohio and Kentucky gets 1,000. Who are these people? You think somebody's going to sit there with a visor and some scrivener who's going to be sitting there saying, let me check this. Forget the hanging chads. This was an actual vote. This was a real vote that was legitimate. We just couldn't figure out if the chad was pushed out or in, compared to, I don't know what this is. Now, This is unprecedented. We'll see what happens with that. Next, we're going to see lawfare versus warfare. We're going to see the courts get into this. So the steal part can just nullify everything. Let me tell you some complaints I had about Trump. First and foremost, every time he did a rally, it was a roast. We know how bad. We know what you did, and we know how stupid Trump is. I mean, how Biden is. And I want to hear what I'm going to do for you. In the event, somebody might say, oh, there's Trump, who is undecided, independent, maybe from a toss-up state or a swing state, who's listening, says, I want to do this, and this. I am not going to tell you. If you went in for a job and you interviewed and you told your employers, my successor was an idiot, terrible, that doesn't, we know that. What are you going to do for me? That's one thing he never did. He never gave people a vision. What are you going to do for me? Here's what I need to do. Here's why you need to reelect me, because I needed this second term to finish off. This is what we have to do. What people also don't realize is this is a and you're going to love this one. Peter, if people hated the mainstream media, and social media, and whoever, everything other than citizen, civilian, alternative, and let's say foreign media, now is the time. This is a subdirectory issue, a sub-referendum on how everybody, I mean everybody, it was so rank and fetid at first, so corrupt, but not like we've seen, not at this particular point. You mentioned Fox News. We've got some very interesting people moving up the ranks. Newsmax is very good, but the best, the absolute best of that particular ilk is OAN, One American News. Younger people who, so help me God, you'll love this. They take almost up John Cameron Swayze, and here we have today young women in particular not doing this it's serious news. Right. They're very good. Okay, that being said, the bottom line is nobody, and you said it before very correctly, nobody votes for Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Nobody ever says, listen, I think he is a man, he's formidable. No. I also believe, going back, and I'm violating my pledge, I don't think they realized, or anybody realized, how his condition had really plummeted.
Oh, I think they do. Oh, I absolutely think they do. And I think
they do now, but they didn't at first. They would not have picked him.
It's a very insidious plan. What I think is in play right here. And when someone tells you what they're doing, believe them. Remember, it was a few weeks ago. I guess it was when the Hunter story was breaking, and it was like at the ice cream cone incident, and he's being asked questions that he didn't like, and he said, you should be talking about him, Trump.
Right.
You should be. And because that was what it was all about. He's playing along here.
Right.
No, actually, it's very interesting. It makes perfect sense to me. Are you going to pack the court? Well, I'll tell you after the election. Okay. Well, what about the new Green Deal? I'll have a commission. I'll do a commission on this. Most commissions go nowhere historically. Okay. What I think is this. Is that Joe, he's been anointed to get them across the line. And once they get across the line, they're done. They're done. He has no purpose.
He's not even the Manchurian candidate. Kamala Harris is a Manchurian candidate. He is the no-show job. He's much like his crime family. And by the way, let me just tell you something. I don't know. I'm certainly not an expert in what used to be called, that classic, from what I hear, Soviet-style corruption, and you always hear about the way it was. But I would put the Biden family up against anyone in any country, in any regime, any mafia, LCN, organized crime. What they did was so blatant. And also keep in mind, you have a DOJ, and you have an FBI, and you have an attorney general doing nothing. It is the most, not only have they done nothing there, they do nothing to go after Black Lives Matter, Antifa, domestic terrorism, nothing.
That needs to be explained. But I think with the Biden family, I think that they actually know a lot. And because of the Jim Comey fiasco in the last election, there's a sense that they can't intervene here. But if he passes the finish line later today or by the end of the week, I don't think this story is going to go away. As a matter of fact, I think there'll be plenty of people that will pull out the knives and say, thanks, Joe. And that's it. I mean, Joe, you'll go down in history. Joe, before you get angry, Joe, before you lose your temper, Joe, you're going to be the 46th president of the United States. That will be on your tombstone, okay? It doesn't mean you're going to last more than 3 or 4 months in presidency, but you will be the 46th president of the United States. But, I mean, let's keep it with today and kind of finish it off on here. I mean, I get every single one of your points, and I think they're valid. But I think at the end of the day, if we step back, how in the world can such a dynamic, and Trump has charisma and anti-charisma, maybe the only politician in history that has both simultaneously, but up against Joe Biden. And again, I don't want to be cruel here, but I mean, over even the last few days, I mean, it's way beyond a gaffe. Okay, it's not gaffes anymore.
No.
This is what the political establishment and the media and Hollywood and academia, even the deep state here, this is what they've chosen. And I think it's because he is just to get them across the line because they have other business in mind. Okay. And Kamala Harris was, from what I understand, she was Obama's candidate. She is a candidate for the Obama clan, the Obama machine. So, I mean, at the end of the day, when I watched all of these rallies and all of the excitement, I just lament that Trump couldn't expand his base. He never got above 47%. So
If you believe this,
it'll be one of these things that, but I really want to stress what I think the good news in all of this is that there's a realignment going on, and it's real. Go ahead,
how?
Brian.
What's going to be realigned?
No, what I'm just saying is that the Republican Party, if they can finally get rid of these libertarians among them, they can have a working class party that is powerful, that doesn't have to, well, you won't be, the left won't be able to accuse it of systemic racism because there's going to be blacks, there's going to be Hispanics, there's going to be whites, there's going to be gays, there's going to be everybody, because that is the kind of realignment that's going on. Because the left, they represent the very poor and the very, very rich, and they have abandoned the middle.
May I bring up for our viewers a little bit of history, which is very interesting, I think. You mentioned before the Republicans, when I grew up, when I was a kid, the Republican was your dad in the country club, at the paneled boardroom, and not really just taxes and just
regulation.
Regulate, but just like money, the moneyed people. Democrats were more working. Okay, fine. All right. Right after the civil rights problems, after everything else, the Democrats, who historically were called the Dixiecrats, and many of them in the South were holdovers from the Civil War. By the way, remember, the Democrats gave us the Ku Klux Klan.
Yep.
Lincoln was a Republican. Anyway, these people said, we really don't feel like we're a part of this. So supposedly there was something called the Southern Strategy, where Richard Nixon reached out to Strom Thurmond. By the way, the only man to move into a hospital, not check in, move into, or he died ultimately. Anyway, who also sired an African-American woman. Anyway, Richard Nixon reached out to him and said, listen, if I win, I'm in charge of the Department of Justice. We are in charge of civil rights. You stick with me. The Democrats aren't going to. So they said, okay. And he embraced that. And he reached out using race. Later on, Ronald Reagan picked up the moral majority. Later on, the libertarians came in, the Tea Partiers, the constitutionalists, and then later on, these other kind of. So now you've got you had this very large tent, this hodgepodge of disparate groups under the rubric of Republican. That was fine, but even that was confused. Here comes Trump. And what does Trump give you? This again. For the first time, the flag, family, religion.
But that's populism. That's what he's doing.
I don't care what you call it. This Republican Party today, and at the very same time, you have on the Democratic Party side people advocating non-binary restrooms, pictures of drag queens teaching kids in public abortion, late term, you name it, anti-fracking, strange. And then Black Lives Matter. This was interesting. Black Lives Matter. At the time, everybody saw this horrible death of George Floyd. Not one person that I know of said, well, the cops obviously were acting within the framework of their duty. They said, no, this is awful. But they used it nonetheless because they were ready to roll this out and they needed anything to pull that trigger, and that was it. So they used Black Lives Matter. But in the meantime, a lot of people, you talk about crypto, a lot of white folks and others are saying, I'm not feeling very safe here. I don't like this. I mean, I'm all for George Floyd, but I'm seeing this rampant kind of a lack of law and order. And that also was a hallmark of the 68 and 72 elections where people want order. So not only are you going to have a realignment, but Peter, you're going to see reemergence of what would be called loosely militias, law and order. Dare I say, sometimes even quasi-meta-fascistic. I mean, people.
Well, I mean, I think, broadly, in something I've mentioned before, I mean, I'll mention a word that hasn't been mentioned in quite a long time because it's a very dangerous word, and it's called secession. And that is not impossible, but could be one of the trajectories if Biden wins. I don't discount that, but I mean the interesting thing
secession from whom? I'm sorry.
Well, leaving the union. Okay, I mean this, when you have a political party at least campaigning that they're going to take away your guns, well, there's that's a lot of people. That's we don't want to be here anymore. Okay, I mean, also part of this realignment is, and the very famed and most much focused on is suburbia, which is recasting the electorate. Okay, and the data is mountainous of their a lot of visceral rejection of Donald Trump. And again, that it shows that you have them used to be part of the Republican coalition and now very much part of the Democrat. But the thing is that I keep stressing here is having a much longer view. I mean, Trump, irrespective of his fortunes later in the day or the end of the week, he's a catalyst for a potential realignment in American politics, which I think is a really, really good thing, because I keep stressing it, and I guess it's becoming my calling card, is that when the Republicans get rid of these libertarians, then they can have a functioning party. Okay, because I want political parties to do things I want to do. Okay, a libertarian to say cut taxes and regulation, our work is done. No, your work isn't done. It isn't done.
Libertarian sounded great at first, and you have the Mises and Hayek and the Milton Friedman and the Mont Pelerin Society and all this. But today, it's almost most of the libertarians are kind of like the way people call themselves an agnostic. They're really atheists, but they don't have the guts.
They do have. If you look the influence they had on Trump, particularly during the pandemic, that hurt Trump. Okay, he because the way they said they were looking in terms of how it's good for their donor class, which is fine. That's what they're there for, but not everyone. And I think that this is a really great divide, because you can't cheer when the stock market goes up and unemployment goes up. You can't. There's something wrong with an ideology that is in power that that can't see both at the same time. And I think that is a danger.
I must also, as the denouement of this incredible conversation that we've had, the most interesting was, and I have to, of course, this, but just to show you how these people think, when it was clearly evident that Hunter Biden, whether you consider it to be important or not, took a laptop to this Delaware strip mall, this man who, and he signed his name and said, I think I have water damage. Okay. And they validated every email and picture. And they obviously looked into this and goes, my God, this is just a smoking gun of a history and series of corruption. Adam Schiff said this is clearly Kremlin, Russian interference yet again. They have no decency at long last, sir.
Okay, well, then I have a question for you, Lionel, because I don't live there. I mean, does that have any effect on anyone anymore? No. I mean, it seems like, it's bouncing the rubble. I mean, when I heard Adam Schiff say that, I just said, you got to be kidding. Haven't you used this up? I mean,
it's right. It's one of those ones where you've got to stop doing this. Interestingly enough, I used to joke that had Russia, if they were to allow, if they said, you know what, let's do the most obvious collusion, whatever it is, or interference, do you realize that they can sit back and say, oh, come on, you're not going to pull that against? No, we've got you. You could have Putin basically saying, all right, now change the vote, catch them on video. They'd say, oh, have you no, we are inoculated, dare I say, vaccinated from that even, but to show the amateurish nature. Don't they have script writers? Don't they have the arc? Like you have a story, a series. You say, where is my character of JR going? Where are we going with this? We need something new. And yet China has been, mum's the word. So this is, again, I am both relieved today and very disappointed, very saddened, because this has just captivated every second of my life, and everybody here as well. There's never been an election like this ever.
Well, we'll end on this, Lionel. If Trump loses, the media is going to really miss him. Okay, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? Their cash cow will be gone. Oh my goodness. There's going to be, if Trump wins, there'll be a river of tears. If Trump loses, there's going to be a river of tears. And you know what? Considering Donald Trump has this huge ego and thinks so much of himself, he will be able to pat himself on the back and say, I made a difference one way or another. I made a difference.
And keep in mind this: they're already saying that they're going to sell off CNN because it's AT&T Group. There's just a waste of time. Zucker's on his way. Zucker needs him. This man. It's like classic 60s and 70s professional wrestling in this country. You had the heel and the babyface. You had heat. You have to have the bad guy. And if you don't have, nobody wants to hear about how great everything. Let me tell you something even sicker. And even worse, and God should strike me dead for even saying this. Do you know, a number of colleagues of mine and I were talking the other day, I said, remember the old days when we had somebody we hated, who was in power? Joe Biden's not in power. He's the candidate. Can you imagine what it would be like us every day if he or Kamala Harris ever got in? God forbid, but it was like you could see the eyes. It's so much easier to say, can you believe what he did today? Can you believe what she said? Versus how great Trump is every day, which is what I'm not doing. But believe me, Sean Hannity and others at Fox would never say this. Never. But if you gave them enough sodium pentothal, they would say, it's a lot easier tearing somebody down who's in power and in charge than building somebody up. Well, that's all I'm going to say.
Irrespective of the result of the election, there's going to be a lot of different kinds of hangovers in political life, okay? And it's going to hurt for a long time. Lionel, it's been such a privilege.
Thank you so much, my friend.
The last few hours of this election here. We've been talking with Lionel here. I'm calling this 2020 election. Lionel gets the last bite, and that's what the title is going to be. If you like this, please like, share, and subscribe to The Gaggle. Thanks, Lionel. Good luck.
Thank you, sir.